All right, WCW Monday Nitro, 19 years ago here today. Unopposed, set a whole bunch of records, as I'm sure you can imagine. You mentioned Max Headroom. On this show, they announced we are in the home of Hootie and the Blowfish.
How was that?
That's, a reference from the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah. Yours was a reference from the 80s.
There we go.
Yeah. So, Tony says the Clash of the Champions took place on Thursday. And now, there is no doubt who it is that Sting wants.
Yeah, because on last week's Nitro, he stood in the ring with a sign that said Sting wants Hogan, and WCW still wasn't sure.
It clips from the Clash of... Basically, Eric is in the ring with the NWO, and the power starts to go on and off, and Sting is shown in the rafters with, yes, a bird.
I think it's a vulture, wasn't it?
It was a vulture. Some of you might recall there was a storyline in TNA where Eric Bischoff was held hostage by a crow.
Was it a crow, or was it even just a little blackbird or something?
It was some sort of bird.
A bird, yeah. Bischoff doesn't do well with birds.
He doesn't.
Wonder what he thought of Coco.
Hey.
Maybe that's why Coco didn't get brought back into the NWO.
It could have been.
He's got a bird phobia.
So a child's voice spoke up. I believe Linus from Charlie Brown. I don't even remember what he said, something about Sting. But anyway, the lights go out, they come back on, and the bird, the vulture, is now on the ring ropes. So Bischoff and the bird look at each other forever. And I mean forever.
He gets a little bit close to it, and then he backs away.
Yes.
Then he regroups and talks to the NWO for a little bit.
So apparently the bird was supposed to drop a note to Eric?
I think there was supposed to be a note on its leg, like it's a carrier pigeon for some reason. But I think the note fell out somewhere along the way. So Eric was supposed to take the note, which I assume said, I want Hogan or something.
Sure.
But there was no note, so they just stood around and looked at the bird for a long period of time.
So they looked at this fucking bird forever, like it seemed 20 minutes. And then, here's the thing. Let's say the bird was supposed to have a note. Or you know what? Let's say the bird wasn't supposed to have a note. There was so goddamn much garbage in the ring. I don't know why Bischoff didn't just reach down, pick up a crumbled piece of paper, open it, say, this is from the bird. It says I want Hulk Hogan.
I think they actually did something like that. Because it wasn't that long ago. When the network first came out, I watched all the Clash of Champions, and this is the very last one.
Oh.
Because they're replaced with Thunder next.
It's not the very last one, Lance. They're coming back.
They're coming back. And I believe when I watched it, he eventually just reaches in his pocket and pulls out a piece of paper and reads the message. And I guess maybe they thought it looked too ridiculous, so they edited it out on Nitro. But again, it wasn't that long ago I watched the last Clash, and I think he did eventually just pull a piece of paper out of his pocket.
Well, anyway, what happened here is finally, after looking at this goddamn bird for an hour, they just go back to Mean Gene Okerlund, and Gene says, well, J.J. Dillon, literally on a silver platter, offered Sting the world. It's a big platter.
And an interesting world.
Yeah. Calls out Eric. Gene has J.J. Dillon on the phone, the worst connection ever. J.J. says, here was their explanation, since we didn't get a note. He says, the fans have lit up the switchboards, and they have spoken, and the fans believe that Sting spoke loud and clear, and so at the end of the year, before this year is out, I will sign Sting versus Hulk Hogan.
Because he needs 4 months to sign a match.
Yes. And of course, everybody goes crazy, and Eric flipped out, and instead of Hogan wanted Sting, he'd take him just like that. Of course, Sting comes out, he gets in the ring behind Eric, and ended up putting a Hogan shirt on Bischoff's head, shoved him over, and then stuffed the shirt down his throat. Big pop for that. What about this Raven promo?
It's really a Bray Wyatt promo without the really great delivery.
Yes.
And it's amazing how, now I don't want to use the word clean cut, because obviously he has the long hair, but just how young and fresh Raven looks.
Oh man, the Rhodalonia.
Yeah, he's aged a little bit in 19 years. Sorry, Scotty.
Well, if Scotty argues that point, then he loses a little bit of credibility. Because he has aged a little bit in the last 19 years, as have we all. La Parka and Psychosis against Glacier and Ernest Miller. 2 luchadors against an American and a karate guy who was about 2 months into his career with almost no training. But like 2 minutes, karate guys had the win, but no ref. Laparca waffled, I believe, Glacier with the chair, and the heels got the pin. And then Ultimo Dragon came out to complain to Sonny Ono, and then Silver King, and then a brawl, and dudes all over, and Ernest doing a dive, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything?
Silver King did a flipping senton and landed right on Dragon's head.
Man.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they keep putting the luchadors with the karate guys. It's like, I don't think there could be a worse style matchup, with the exception of, was it a Clash or a pay-per-view when the Freebirds fought Silver King and Texano in the NWA World Tag Team Tournament? It was the worst style clash in history.
Saying something.
Watching Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin try to catch topes was just ridiculous.
We had Ultimo Dragon versus Silver King. Dragon told the ref, I can do this match, even though he's been beaten up in the previous segment. And so the ref rang the bell.
Yep.
The dude's on the match selling. He didn't even let the guy get to his feet first. So then Ultimo Dragon just stopped selling, and they had a lucha match, the highlight of which was Silver King putting Dragon in an abdominal stretch and grabbing a full handful of his nuts.
Had to have been. I don't know what else his hand would be grabbing down there. Yeah, instead of grabbing the rope for additional leverage, he just seemed to reach between his legs, grab his ball sack, and Dragon sold more.
He literally was grabbing his balls.
Had to have been.
And then Tony, on commentary, goes, Silver King has got a big hand. He's holding on to his hamstring. It's like, oh, yeah? Huh, how about that?
So his hamstring goes rather high. Although that wasn't the highlight of the match. I think the highlight of the match was Tenay calling the back spring hand elbow.
Yes, he did a back spring hand elbow, and then a Hurricane Rana, which was botched, and then a top rope Hurricane Rana and a Dragon Sleeper for the win. Even though we buried it, it was kind of fun.
But why do you beat the living hell out of Dragon by 3 guys to have a match that he's just going to win?
Oh, man, if you're watching the show like this, Lance,
well,
you're
yeah,
in for
I
it.
suppose.
You're in for it, dude.
I apologize. My bad.
It's barely even started. Hall, Savage, and Liz came out, and this was quite the deal. Hall said, we're the reason you're all here tonight. We want to welcome our newest member, DDP. Of course, no DDP. Savage says, listen, I have to be honest, I voted no on DDP, but the NWO didn't have a weak link, so I'm cool that he's in. I don't even know what that means.
Well, every team needs a weak link, so they got DDP.
I see. I got it. Thank you, Lance.
There you go. You're quick on the uptake.
I was very slow on the uptake. I thought they were both slow on the uptake during this whole promo. That's part of the problem.
It was a fairly pointless promo for quite a while, yeah.
Rambled on, music played, Savage called out Luger and vowed to punk him out.
But then Tony announced the match like it was already booked, like he didn't really call him out.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here.
I think it was just we need to get the NWO on TV in this segment.
Gene showed clips of a blinded DDP giving Luger the diamond cutter at the Clash, which brought out DDP. He could not believe that Gene was skeptical of where his allegiance lays. He says, it's ludicrous that I would join the NWO. And Gene says, well, were you blinded and hit the wrong man? And DDP says, duh. And Gene was flummoxed.
Flummoxed, good word.
Tried to get a hold of Lex later, but he left. Couldn't get a hold of him. He's not in the building as of 10 minutes ago. He vowed that he was a stand-up guy, and if Luger was there, he would be there later as well to talk to him.
I really like this, because as much as, again, you're burying me for looking for logic in the last segment, this is something that drives me crazy now when you have guy and a girl that are a couple or tag team partners, that they do the inadvertent misdirection spot, we hit your partner, and 7 days later they want to call their partner out here to talk it out.
That's right.
Where Paige explained that when he got to the back, Luger had already left the building, and that he'd called him during the week and couldn't get a hold of him, and he got to the building early and he couldn't find Luger, so he hadn't had a chance to talk to his buddy yet. It's like Paige is dotting I's and crossing T's, and I appreciate it.
Hey, I mean, listen, 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, if you and your buddy have a problem and you both drive off in a separate car and you're going to separate hotels, there are no cell phones, how the fuck would you get a hold of a guy until you show up at the next event?
Hey, Paige had his Palm Pilot.
He did actually at the time. But the point is, you could get
Yes.
away with that 30 years ago. You can't get away with that in 2016.
No, now they say, I reached out on social media and I haven't heard back from my wife.
That's right. We had Benoit and Jarrett. This was a Memphis versus Japan battle. And Memphis won.
Yeah, there's something wrong with that.
Benoit destroyed him forever, went for a superplex. Jarrett turned it into a small package, 1, 2, 3. Wrong man won this battle.
Yep. Although one thing that was really bad with this match is the announcers botched the call of the pin. I don't know if you noticed, but they said 1 when it was the 2, and they said 2 when it was the 3.
Yes.
And then Benoit kicked out at 3.5, and it felt like it wasn't the finish.
And then we had the Faces of Fear. Meng Barbarian, it said on the screen.
Yeah, like it's the one dude's name.
Yeah, there was no and. Meng Barbarian faced Wrath and Mortis. Listen, here's how I'm going to explain this match. I love Meng and the Barbarian, but this was horrible. Barbarian sold only as much as absolutely necessary, and then he just stopped when he was done with it. He applied the stroke, or something resembling the stroke, maybe a front Russian leg sweep you thought it might have been?
Yeah, because he had the one arm hooked behind his own head and the other, and then it sort of looked like a stroke and sort of like a frontward side Russian leg sweep.
Mortis and Meng get a hot tag. It just, with every passing moment, turned into more of a disaster. But you know what? At the end of the day, what do you want out of Meng and the Barbarian?
You want chaos.
That's what we got.
2 dudes that you look at and go, man, I would not want to fight these men.
Yes. So at the end of the day, the easiest way to describe this is it was really not good, but goddamn it was fun.
Yeah, and we got a Tongan death grip for the finish, and then they continue to fight afterwards because this feud must continue.
Horseman came out. Gene was there to interview them. If only Vinny were here, his favorite segment. Actually, finally, after all these months, was great.
Yeah, it really was. And it's telling because this was 19 years ago. And as soon as they come out and started, I looked at you and said, is this the My Spot promo? This is the Arn retirement promo.
That's right.
And the fact that as soon as they hadn't even started yet, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the promo. And now I'm curious if the promo would be as legendary if the NWO didn't do the spoof.
Good question.
Because it was a great promo. And Flair standing just behind Arn, he's just over his shoulder, and you can see him tearing up as Arn delivers this awesome promo.
Well, here's part of the deal. So Arn cuts his promo, and the NWO ends up spoofing it, as you noted. Now, the other thing about that is, if you were following the business very closely, you know the entire disaster that went on backstage with that Horseman spoof. Where, like, the Horsemen were supposed to beat up the NWO afterwards, and the whole thing fell apart, and they never got their revenge, and Arn was pissed off, and his family, the whole 9 yards. I think that the combination of this promo, the spoof, and the backstage stuff made it legendary if you were there in that era and you were following the whole thing. But this was a goddamn great retirement promo. Flair's crying. Essentially, Flair calls out Hennig. Hennig doesn't want to join the Horsemen, so Flair said, you know what, I figured you would say that. I've got a man who wants to talk to you. It's Arn Anderson. And Arn talks about, I got 4 vertebrae out. I have no use of my left hand. Some guy in the gym slapped me on the back. My whole system shut down. I know I got to walk away. Flair's weeping in the background. He says, I want you fans to remember me for what I was, not what I am right now. And I have one last challenge to you, Kurt Hennig. You have something special. And I want you to stand by my best friend, Ric Flair, and I want you to make the Horsemen great again. And I'm not just offering you a spot with the Horsemen. I'm offering you something that only I can give you. I'm giving you the only thing that I have left, my spot. And Hennig says, it would be a privilege. And he shakes hands, and he joins the Horsemen.
Because that's a big deal. Because that's the one thing. It's like Flair and Arn to this point are the 2 constants.
Yes.
Flair's obviously at the helm, always has been, always will be when it comes to the Horsemen. But we've seen what? When you got Ole, Sid, Luger, Benoit, Mongo, Jarrett was sort of in for a while. Was Paul Roma already in and gone at this point in time?
He was in and gone, yeah.
All of these people in and out, but it's like Arn's a constant. And it's like there's been a lot of people that had spots, but Arn's was a meaningful spot. And like this was a powerful promo. I remember this vividly.
Dude, I must have transcribed it because I remembered it word for word when I watched it. It was crazy. Awesome segment. I also wonder, what if they had had a guy and Arn gave him the spot and the guy didn't turn on Ric Flair immediately, which is what happens here. Spoiler, everybody. I mean, if he really had passed the torch to the right guy, I wonder what that could have done for WCW and the Horsemen, instead of just being yet another angle to humiliate Flair.
Yeah, and what a great spot had they picked the right guy. Because, to be honest, Kurt was super established at that point. He's not going to get that big elevation. But if you had, again, just for a today analogy, if you wanted to put Roman Reigns on the map type of thing, it had that guy that you wanted to do, and you put him in that spot, it would really mean something, yeah.
And then we had Eddie Guerrero and Steve Mongo McMichael.
I love Mongo.
I think part of Mongo's charm is that he is the exact opposite of Kevin Nash. Nash did as little as humanly possible to get by, whereas Mongo completely sucked, but he tried so hard.
Yeah, he's willing to do anything and give anything in there.
He gave it his all.
And I think the biggest thing is it's because he's just a big, tough bastard.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you have to hit him for real, he's fine with that. If he just has to throw his body somewhere and hope for the best, he's willing to do that. He's got no finesse. He's got no grace. But damn, he's just going to go to it.
But you know what? Let's look at the Retro Raw. You got Ken Shamrock.
Yep.
Ken Shamrock was a UFC fighter. He was somebody different. He was somebody special. He should have come in and done a shoot fighter gimmick, but instead, he did it for like one show, and then they turned him into a professional wrestler who did a bunch of professional wrestling moves, and he was exactly like everybody else.
Including Rana's.
That's right. Mongo is a fucking member of the Chicago Bears. He's a big-ass, tough football player. Why would you want anything more from this guy? Why would you want finesse?
He clubs the shit out of people and he runs them over. That's his offense.
Yeah. Like, in the words of Daniel Bryan, why would you want Mongo to be a technique wrestler?
Exactly.
He's a football player.
And Mongo was not a cowardly wrestler.
No, he was not a cowardly wrestler.
That man would throw.
So Guerrero does this absolutely hideous tornado DDT, which was all Mongo's fault.
Oh my God, yes, he did not bump the way you're supposed to.
Try to springboard Hurricane Rana. Mongo cannot roll, but goddamn he tried.
But imagine Eddie figuring that I'm going to do the springboard Rana on Mongo.
Yeah. So then finally, Eddie goes for a high cross and actually maybe a moonsault, whatever it was.
No, it was the dive back. It was the top rope crossbody while you're facing out.
That's right.
And you spin and come back, and Mongo caught him in the tombstone pile driver position.
And hit him.
And hit him. So yeah, Eddie's got balls too.
This was also a complete disaster, but it was so much fun.
It was an enjoyable disaster.
Then we had what may have been my favorite segment, and I'll tell you why. Rey comes out, Rey Mysterio. He says he should have known better than to go to Sturgis and wrestle Conan. Dr. James Andrews is going to give him a definitive answer tomorrow as to what's wrong with his knee. So here's what I wrote. Out comes the Hamburglar.
K-Dog.
So the moment I write out comes the Hamburglar, Conan says, Ray, you should grab yourself a Happy Meal. It's like, so clearly he knew that his gimmick, he looked like the fucking Hamburglar. Anyway, he beat him up and Giant scared him off.
And then Ray did the promo talking about K-Dog talking about his Raza or his family, whatever the hell he said.
Familia.
And he says, him and the Giant are family. And I'm like, when did this happen?
It's the other side of the family, I presume.
It's just like, when were they family? It's like, I thought this was the first time Giant came out with him.
You know, when you're all in that babyface locker room, you're just a family, Lance. You
there
should
you
know
go.
this.
Or someone just decided, let's put the biggest and the smallest guy we have together. That'll be neat.
So there aren't a lot of matches where you take two guys in 1997, and not only are those men still around in 2016, but it's virtually guaranteed that if they wrestled today, the match would be significantly better.
Yeah, although before you get to that, Bischoff came out at the start of the second hour, which we're just getting to now.
That's right.
And he sent Bobby Heenan and Mike Tenay away, so it was Shivani and Eric at the desk, and this was not a good substitution.
Oh, Yuji Nagata and Chris Jericho.
Yeah. And I know you won't stooge me off, so I'll stooge myself off. When Jericho come out, I pointed out to you that at this point in time, Jericho's still pretty green and excited and often rushes and goes really fast and it gets ugly. And no sooner had I said that this match had a couple things go awry and it sped up and got ugly.
The best part. Something went wrong and the match starts to fall apart. And Jericho's solution is, I must just go faster.
Yeah, he's doing the Japanese clothesline in the corner thing.
That's right.
But he's doing it the way Kane did, and it's basically trying to do it the speed of the uppercut train.
Yeah. The best part, he's throwing the man corner to corner, and he begins running so fast that he lapped him.
He passed him.
He had to slow down again and then throw the guy into the corner. I was dying.
And he did 3 or 4, and by the third one, I think he did get to the turnbuckle before Nagata.
Anyone. I don't even remember how. I was still laughing and typing about this.
He put the Lion Tamer at the time. He tried to do the double or triple power bomb. He power bombed him, picked him up, only got him about sternum high, power bombed him again, and put him in the Lion Tamer. And it wasn't until he had the Lion Tamer on that either of the announcers mentioned there was even a match in the ring. They completely ignored them talking about other stuff.
My father-in-law's here. And he walks by, and he watches the match for like maybe 10 seconds.
At the most.
And now keep in mind, to be fair, he is a huge sports fan, but he watches no wrestling. So he watches it for like 10, 15, 20 seconds, and then he turns to us and says, why are the announcers talking about everything except the match that's in the ring?
Yeah, I think he said, why are they arguing rather than talking about the guys in the ring?
And by the way, for those wondering, the ratings, even though this was unopposed, when Bischoff and Shivani got out there and they really started bantering back and forth, lost viewers in large numbers.
Wow.
Yep.
So I wasn't the only one that thought
you
this
were
was
not
terrible.
the only one. People were like, fuck this show. Harlem Heat and Jackie's enormous tits came out.
I even made a note of that because I figured Craig would and I was filling his shoes.
I don't want to be a pig, but I mean, come on.
There was a lot of boobies out.
Cutting a promo, the Steiners came out, then Vicious and Delicious, and I guess they're setting up something. I don't even know what the point of this was.
It was, just to get guys on television and help fill those hours, I guess.
Dean Malenko and your main man, Alex Wright.
Yep.
Alex Wright. Have I ever noted, Lance, that Dean Malenko is awesome?
You may have mentioned it once or twice, and he was quite awesome in this on several occasions.
Let me tell you something, everybody. I watched this with Lance Storm, renowned technical wrestler. And there were at least 2 points in this match where you went, whoa.
Yeah,
You were caught off guard by how cool Malenko was.
Well, I wasn't caught off guard that he was cool. He just did a couple of really cool things I haven't seen either in a while or perhaps before.
Yeah.
The one was he was caught in the head scissor, and he spun to his back, had Alex's legs crossed, and then he bridged up, which I've seen done a bunch of times, but then he did pull over, walk over, whatever, and ended up sitting on Alex's back with the legs crossed. I'm like, that was cool. And of course it was
awesome.
And it was Malenko, so it was smooth as hell.
Yeah. So he went for the cloverleaf, and Eddie and Jarrett hit the ring for the disqualification.
Just because we mentioned the two things, right before he did the cloverleaf, Alex went for a German, and he hooked his left foot behind the knee of Alex Wright to block it, which I've seen a million times. It was really cool. But then he pulled real hard and tripped him with it and bumped Alex, and then spun immediately into the cloverleaf. And I was like, God damn, Dean Malenko's great.
He was very, very good. So, like I said, Eddie and Jarrett ran in for the DQ, and horrible finish. Malenko in the figure 4, Alex with the boot off the top, Eddie with the frog splash. And then they played Alex Wright's music because he's the big star of these guys. Now, listen, when WCW was having problems, everybody wanted to see the young guys elevated. They wanted to see the guys like Malenko and Guerrero and Benoit moved up into the main event scene. Now, I'm not going to say they shouldn't have done that because obviously they should have. That's one of the reasons the company died. But when I saw this match, and I thought, you know, what we really needed was them to move these guys up so they could have 2-minute matches with DQs when dudes run in the main event of every fucking show. I don't think that would have been an improvement.
No, well, Eric Bischoff talks about everything but them.
God. And finally, Savage and Luger.
This was weird.
It was very weird. In fact, weird. I wrote right here at the end. Weird finish. So, Savage worked him over.
Forever.
Yeah.
Like he jumped him at the start and Luger got nothing. And
it was weird because he rammed his head into the post, and then he rammed into the guardrail repeatedly, And Luger went down like he was gigging, but no blood came out. He needed Lesnar there. Or Savage to open him up. Did you ever see that match where Savage and Flair did the match, and Flair was going to get juice, and instead of doing it himself, he had Savage cut him?
No.
Oh.
I can't imagine that's a good idea.
No. Imagine what you think would happen. That's exactly what happened. Anyway, Savage sold forever, long sleeper. Luger backdropped his way free, makes his big comeback. This led to the only good thing that Bischoff did all night on commentary.
When he was counting Luger's moves?
Luger hits the forearm, and he goes for the rack, and the place is going nuts for the rack. And, of course, the NWO guy is selling. And Eric Bischoff on commentary goes, "We need medical attention. Scott Hall went to medical school." And Scott Hall is on the apron, and he interfered for the DQ. I thought, okay, that was a funny line. So Hall hit the ring. Luger turned around. He's blinded or confused or whatever, and DDP's right there, and so he racks DDP right as the show goes off the air. So we're supposed to be wondering, what's going on? Are these guys feuding? Is it constantly an accident?
Yeah, it was a good idea for a finish, in that, again, DDP did accidentally, or perhaps on purpose, hit his finisher on Luger, so they found a way to have Luger get his on DDP, so storyline-wise, it was good. But, again, it's amazing that Luger got no offense for what felt like 10 or 15 minutes. But as soon as he got his comeback, crowd going crazy. Luger's so over, and especially after the cutting him off at the knees when he won the title for a day and a half or whatever it was. It's amazing how over this dude remains.
You know what's so funny, too, is sometimes people talk about how Brian always wants something, but then he gets it and he complains. Now, I don't feel like I do that, but I'm going to do it right here. Every week on this goddamn show, the main event comes, and it goes 2 minutes, and a bunch of idiots run in, and it's a DQ, and it sucks. They finally give us an 8-minute match, and it was so boring.
Well, yeah, but I think you were expecting more than just Luger laying on the floor selling while Savage
You're
stomps
right.
on.
I was expecting more.
Now, Savage had some awesome stomps because he stomped Luger in the back of the head, the side of the face, and I don't think he hurt him at all. But yeah, it was just Luger laying there. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't try to push Randy off. It was just, I will sell, you beat me up, and when it's time to go home, we'll go home.
And that's what happened. And that's Nitro, everybody. Lance, before we wrap it up here, when's the last time you did a show with us? On Sunday?
Sure.
All right, so we've had a little bit of news. Any thoughts on the whole rigmarole with Jericho and Brock Lesnar? What do you make of this insanity?
It doesn't...
It's 2016.
Yeah, it is, but it doesn't surprise me because, and I've said this to a lot of people, Jericho will not back down from anyone. I first got my glimpse of this in Smoky Mountain when Bruiser Bedlam was there, who was like 290 pounds, straight out of prison. He was a legit heavy for a motorcycle gang in Ontario or Quebec. He's had several murder charges pressed against him. I know he did time for trying to blow up a police station. He was a bad dude. And Jericho and him got in an argument in a car once. And Jericho told whoever was driving to pull over, got out, and basically told Bruiser, it's like, look, if we're going to go, get your ass out here. And Bruiser calmed it down and said, okay, look, let's just let this go and get back in the car. And Jericho said afterwards, it's like, I was expecting to get my ass handed to me, but he's like, I won't back down. And so he wouldn't back down for Bruiser Bedlam. He wouldn't.
So the old more guts than brains?
I don't know about that, but certainly would rather go down swinging than tuck his tail.
So he has the brains because he knows he's going to get smashed, most likely.
He's willing to.
Sure.
He's got guts. And obviously he stood up to Bill Goldberg and wouldn't take shit. And apparently Brock Lesnar's no exception, and I'm not surprised.
And then one other thing we didn't get a chance to talk about on Sunday was the injury to Finn Balor, which we talked about that spot on Sunday, and that ended up being the spot that he got hurt on, the powerbomb into the barricade. And now he got surgery today. He's going to be out 6 months. He had to relinquish the title. What's going on in this business, Lance?
Well, we talked about it in other matches too, and it's the reliance on oh my god, holy shit moves and stunts that is leading to a lot more guys getting hurt. And when you're throwing someone backwards at stuff where your view is partially obstructed, and he's flying back. And I've seen guys, if they come a little short, they bang their head on the barricade. Too high, you hit your back and fold yourself the wrong way. And to me, on the replays, it looked like Finn was coming in up a little short, and he reached back with his one arm to try to take the top of the barricade, sort of like the top of the rope or the turnbuckle, to help.
Which is how you would take it.
To try to catch himself somewhat, and it was too short, and he hit his forearm or his elbow into it, and it jammed his shoulder forward, and obviously popped it out of the socket and tore his labrum. And both of these guys are good enough to have great matches without using these high-risk moves. I'm not a fan of the buckle bomb. You've got a real small margin for error, and also, too, and this is another thing that I've always been against, is when your moves have a high risk, but the risk is on you, I don't mind it as much. Tommy Dreamer, with all the stupid, dangerous shit he did in his career, he was always putting himself at risk. You were never at risk. It's the funny thing of the innovator of violence. It's like he's innovating different ways that he can kill himself. He never put you at risk. But when you're throwing guys backwards, it's all on you and the risk's all on him, and I don't like stuff like that. And I didn't like it when Sting took the buckle bomb. I don't like seeing it when other guys take the buckle bomb, because if they come up short, it's the back of their head, and this one against the barricade was not good.
All right, everybody. On that note, we're going to wrap it up. Lance has been a great guest here, both on the show and out here at the beach. You should see this guy push a baby stroller. It's something else. So I want to thank him very much. And before we go, let's get some plugs in for the school. Are there any openings?
Not currently for a little while. We're a couple weeks away from starting the September 2016 session, which will begin my 12th year in business.
Wow.
Stormwrestling.com is where you can go to get information on it. The September class is full. The January class is full. The May class is full, and we're booking into September 2017. Now, there are occasions, we've already had a couple people cancel or postpone already from some of those classes, but I overbook anticipating that. So there's always a chance that a spot will open up and you could squeeze into those, but you can book into September and indicate that you'd like to bump early if something opens up. So stormwrestling.com for that. And again, I'm the guy in the ring teaching you. I wrestle a match with all my students. So it's a great place to learn. Students have had success all over the world. There's people all over the place. Japan, Mexico, Lucha Underground, NXT, WWE, you name it. At Lance Storm. TNA, yes. Chelsea and the French Italian. At Lance Storm on Twitter for all my general updates and what's going on. And also, too, I've got T-shirts at Pro Wrestling Tees. There's Lance Storm, Thrill Seekers, and Storm Wrestling Academy shirts available there, so check them out.
And that is it, everybody. Check all of it out at Lance Storm on Twitter. I am at Brian Alvarez, and I'll be back for Observer Live on Thursday. Mike's got it for one more day. I'll be back in studio for the Dave Show tomorrow, and then back and forth. So we got a lot of stuff coming up. Check out the front page, everybody, and we'll talk to you again after a while.